Welcome everyone. My name is David Green. I am the partner engagement manager here at Harmonize, and today I am joined by Heather Evans, who is going to be with us presenting on the webinar today, which is designing curiosity. Uh, Basically, it's we're going to be highlighting Heather's work in her classroom, and we'll get more into that in just a little bit. But I do want to just let everyone know if you have questions as we go throughout the webinar, please ask. It really does make the webinars more enjoyable and interactive when we have people who ask questions. So if you have questions, anything that comes up, put that in the chat, and I'll make sure I'll ask Heather those questions. I'll pass it back to Heather real quick, and Heather, if you want to introduce yourself and give a little bit more about your background.
Yep. So, hello everyone. I'm Heather Evans. I am a medical billing and coding instructor at Wayne Community College in Goldsboro, North Carolina. And I teach mostly our coding courses. I do occasionally teach a Microsoft Word class, and I do occasionally teach a medical law class. But basically, I deal strictly with 148, which is basically medical billing and insurance, 247, which is going to be your procedure coding, 248, which is diagnostic coding, and then a capstone course, 249, which basically is a certification prep class it's a capstone class. We kind of bring everything together from medical terminology to insurance billing, your diagnostic coding, and your procedure coding all together to prepare our students to sit for certification exams.
That's awesome. One of the things that we talked, me and Heather talked about this last week, kind of doing some prep for the webinar, is it's really interesting to see, especially here in North Carolina. Both Heather and I are in North Carolina. Actually, what, 30 minutes down the road from each
Yeah,
other?
not far at
Uh,
all.
Not far at all. I'm in Wilson and she's in Goldsboro, if anybody knows where those places are. Um, but here in North Carolina, we're seeing a lot of, especially in the community colleges, this very much a focus on workforce or CTE uh, uh, type of courses and teaching and certifications, where you're bringing students in that may be, your traditional 18-year-olds coming right out of high school, but could also go up into, later in age, second careers, third careers, things to that nature. And a lot of times people think, well, these students are not using online tools for these classes, but in reality, instructors are really taking advantage of that. And those students, no matter the age, are expecting to have some tools like that to be used. Um, and so that's what we're going to be talking about today. When I met with Heather last fall,
Mhm.
part of my job is to meet with instructors, and especially those that are doing some very interesting things. And it became apparent to me that Heather was doing some really innovative work, especially for medical coding type billing courses that you don't see a lot of times, especially around incorporating videos and the type of dialogue she was giving to her students in her instructions. Um, I guess kind of to start out, Heather, um, what kind of what were you seeing in your class that made you kind of rethink how you were going to go about, teaching the course and looking for different ways to make it to be, more curiosity from the students so that they were engaging with each other? What set the stage of why you decided to change, I guess.
So one thing about our program is we are a completely online. So, the adult learner who has kids at home, even newly graduated students who want to have that flexibility and do online work. So I kind of started out, my classes were 16 weeks. And administration come to us and they were like, we would like to move these classes to 8 weeks. Well, 8 weeks is a lot of information in the coding world for a student to get. So I started looking at, and another thing with online is, textbooks are great for online and especially great in the world of coding because we have yearly code updates. So, it takes a lot off me having to make sure that my codes are used correctly and things like that. So while I love textbook, just in today's world of TikTok and social media creators and content creators and things like that, they are awesome. And, attention spans, my attention span's kind of short too. And I was like, I was thinking when I'm compressing these classes from 16-week classes to 8-week classes is how am I going to get the students to understand all these concepts in a textbook. And looking forward, there are great social media content creators out there for medical coding and billing. I'm sure for everyone's discipline, you can probably find some great YouTube videos and content creators. So that was my way. I had to pull this together and figure out how I was going to get students to basically actively be involved in the learning process outside of just the textbook and find other ways for students to learn the curriculum.
So I know we talked about this too. You had the change from, okay, we're going to have 16-week classes, we're going down to 8. But you also kind of mentioned there was some activity among the students that also kind of pushed you into into looking at different ways to engage the students, mainly around AI usage, right? Like, what were you seeing there, and what was happening?
So basically, around AI usage, I was scared that our students just using AI or just Googling codes because we're online. I'm not sitting there in a classroom over someone looking in an ICD-10 or a CPT code manual. How do I know that they're just not copy paste? Let's pop this in and let's just see. So I want to know and I want to see that students are actually able to demonstrate that they're learning the content and they're obtaining this knowledge that they can take with them.
And you also mentioned something else I thought I hadn't really thought through, that a lot of times the outdatedness of the information that happens year over year, uh, they were relying on ChatGPT, and ChatGPT was just giving them the incorrect information, right? Like, I mean, this was, and so they, even if they felt like they were learning through the AI, they were learning wrong. Uh,
Correct. Because we can't, I like to use AI. I use AI myself. I have my students use AI, but I also have them check the validity of that. So, is that actually true? Well, we can have AI to help us, but let's go out there and verify that AI is accurate as well because I've run into some scenarios. Just for an example, with Harmonize, I use AI to help come up with my discussion boards. And I will have students, basically, I have a discussion board prompt, and I've even saw and witnessed that AI was incorrect because I do use AI to help me, but I know enough about the codes to see when something's wrong. So I've actually basically, what I do, and I have AI help me reply to the discussion boards, is I go in there and I put, acting as an instructor in this discussion board in this class, and here's the prompt. Help me reply to students so that I can basically push them further to go out and find this information. And I've encountered things as well using AI, Chat GPT, and things like that. And I can't remember exactly now what it was, but I was like, no, that's not quite right, Chat GPT. And it was like, oh, you're right. So also I found it wrong on my end. So I know students are getting the wrong answer and things like that. But so that's basically kind of why and with our students being completely online, um, Harmonize and discussion boards, especially the video portion of Harmonize, allows my students to record themselves demonstrating them looking up the codes and walking through scenarios.
yeah, I mean, that's really kind of, it's almost like you're spying on them, but in a good way. You can actually gain more information, is what you were telling me, into their thought process, kind of like reflection pieces, right?
Yes, yes. So, for an example, just recently, I had the students in our capstone course. I basically had 6 scenarios, and that capstone course is preparing them to go sit for the Certified Professional Coder exam that's offered and given by the AAPC. But basically, some of the skills we concentrate in there are process of elimination and basically looking up the code. So I gave them like 6 scenarios, and I said, hey, choose which scenario you like, because if there's a particular area in coding that you prefer or you're kind of drawn to, you can choose one of those 6 cases. So just recently I had a skin tag case removal, and you know 3 out of 4 students I found were interpreting that code incorrectly. And so I was able to go in there and say, hey, you did a great job, but this code says for 10 and the add-on code says for an additional whatever it was. I can't remember if it was an additional 10, but so we don't times two the add-on code. So I was able to clarify that so that before they go sit for that exam, that they know, oh, okay, I was doing this wrong, and this is in a capstone course, so that's something that they can fix. That's just recently an issue that I've saw that I was able to correct.
Well, and I think it's really important too. Like you're not just knowing they got the wrong answer or the right answer. You're understanding why they came to that wrong answer,
Right.
which allows for your feedback and your and your teaching of them and instructing of them to be more precise and it not just be like, well, you got it wrong. Figure out why. It leaves them to kind of flounder a lot, right?
Right. And that's one other thing that I look through is like code descriptions, and not to make this all about medical coding and billing, but I'm able to see their thought process that they would have sitting on an exam, because in that same
Mm.
discussion board, I was able to say, tell me your elimination tactics for quickly eliminating codes. Because if you know that certain codes are in the 10,000 series and certain codes are in the 7,000, then you should be able to quickly eliminate. This is probably not the code because that's a radiology that deals with radiology. We're not doing anything with radiology. So it was great to be able to see them from start to finish walk through their whole process.
We actually had a question come through from Barbara. She was wanting to know, are you still using a textbook? And if so, which textbook are you using right now?
So I currently do use a textbook. I use McGraw-Hill, their coding 321 Coded. And then for the CPC class, there's a prep class that I use for that. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but if she would like to send me an email or put her email in there, I'll be glad to like send her the links to the books that I use. So I do use the textbook, and I do use the McGraw-Hill Connect LMS software that integrates with our Moodle course. But I do also link to back to the great content creators, right? Sometimes, I've been there reading the textbook and I'm like, I just don't get it. So that's why the YouTube videos and the TikTok, not everybody, but a lot of people scroll TikTok, right? I'm bad for it myself sometimes, but there's great learning in social media content creators that I don't have to reinvent the wheel. So I don't have to sit there and record these videos when there's great content out there already. So I also use another thing it used to be called Quiz Eyes. It's now called Wayground, but I can link to YouTube videos and basically overlay questions that they have to answer. So it's content that we're studying that week or in that module that they should learn in a textbook. But if they don't learn that way, they can watch a video and answer questions. And I use that as a assignment that is required. And they're short. They're usually, 5, 10 minutes. I do have links to great instructors out there that go through every bit of the guidelines for them. Those are long, they're an hour long. It's a lot of material, but if the students learn that way, then they can sit there and use it. But I do use a lot of the quick 5-10 minute videos. Some of them are not even that long.
So I'm a little curious. So and like you said, we don't want to make this all about medical coding, but we can kind of relate it around things. When you were going through that process, you had a textbook, and that's what you were using. You realize I need to do something more, and you integrate the more media focused content into the course.
Hmm.
Um, this is where it could probably apply to anybody, anyone teaching any type of course. What was that process like on a like actual instruction side of things? Did you have to teach the students, hey, this is how you're going to use this material? Did it come instinctually to them? What was that process like in actually making that switch over to put that material in?
So it's actually seamless. I didn't really have any trouble with anyone being able to use Harmonize, being able to use Wayground. So very seamlessly it integrates within our LMS Moodle. And to be honest, I have more issues with students in my Microsoft Word class using the Microsoft Word technology than I do in my coding classes. So you know, even the ones that are not great, maybe some older generation that's not great with technology, I really haven't received any negative information from them.
So, well, what was that feedback when you made that switch over and started incorporating videos and TikToks? Were you getting good feedback? Was it just no feedback?
So, yes, I was actually getting feedback, and I went last night. Let's see if I can quickly find it. And I basically pulled out from my evaluations, let's see, a couple of feedback that the students put in at the end of the year. And so I had one OST 247 student say they appreciated the related content links because it helped them understand the course material more thoroughly. 248 students shared that Wayground videos supported what they had learned in each model and or module and helped the class understand the material. And another student said they appreciated the real world scenarios and discussion boards and the feedback that helped ensure they understood the assignment. So basically, it's really great feedback that my students are enjoying that. And it's not just going out there and doing just the course content work that's provided by McGraw-Hill Connect.
That's interesting that they said real world, scenarios. I think that is something that a lot of we talked about this before too. You have a senior in high school. I have a freshman at university, and students they're catching on more that they need to have actual skills, not theoretical skills. They need to have skills when they go into the workplace after college, and if they can understand how the information actually relates to what they're going to experience in the job front, then they're more willing to listen. They're more willing to apply their knowledge better and focus in on that. And so how do you feel like that the social media videos and the scenarios you give out, is that helping build that into the classroom, that more real world experience?
Absolutely, absolutely. Just one of the content creators that I use, she's actually out there in the real world, and she owns her own coding company, and she's an auditor. So, when I usually link to her videos. I'm sure in every discipline you can find a great content creator out there, or some type of videos to use on YouTube or something like that, even TikTok. So they I do think that that is helping them.
I'm just curious. This just popped in my head actually. do you go through any process with the content creators? Do you before you would share a video, do you kind of verify um their standing, look at their educational background, or look at why should we you listening to this voice,
Yes, yes.
compared to just Joe off the corner of the street, saying his opinion?
Yes, so I do go out there and I vet them. I don't just allow them to watch any person. That's why I actually provide the direct link. I actually met the content creator I like to use is Contempo Coding. Victoria is her name, and I've actually met her. I attend usually every year a Teach the Teacher at AAPC HealthCon convention, and I met her last year at Teach the Teacher and told her, how I love her content and it's great. She has all these great certifications behind her name and she's excellent. So I definitely, vet the content creators that you're using, vet the YouTube videos. I watch all of them. I'm the one that actually goes in there, I watch them, and I embed my own questions when I'm using Wayground, which is where they go watch the video and they complete the quiz and answer the questions within the video. So basically, it's her speaking, she's talking on a subject, and then I insert questions so they can't just speed through the video. They have to watch the video and then answer the questions.
Had a couple questions here again from Barbara. And thank you, Barbara, for asking questions. She was wanting to know, is McGraw Hill using AI in their online textbooks? I guess that's what she's meaning. And what about the content being accessible? Have you had any issues with any of that?
I have not had any issues with the content being accessible. Um, as of yet, I haven't run into anything. With as far as McGraw Hill using AI, I don't think they're using AI in regards to like their coding curriculum and things like that. The AI that I'm using is just like outside. It is, Chat GPT, or it is, you guys have AI through Harmonize that you can
Yeah,
use for discussion forums as well.
got it. Okay. Does I've never played around with Wayground, which you said formerly was another company. I guess did they use AI in their
They do
platform?
use some AI. I think they have some that it can kind of create the questions for you. It's been a little bit since I actually kind of created a new video. So from what I recall, they do use a little bit of AI.
Um, so when you're going through and you're teaching the students the coding, and you said you have multiple levels that you teach, are you having the same students typically go from one class to the other, or is it new students in each course?
So I typically have the same students going from one course to the other. So they usually start out, in my lower level, the regular medical insurance, all the way to OST 249, which when they take that course, they're usually graduating within that semester or the next semester.
Yeah. So the tool that I'm here representing is Harmonize. And so I'm wondering, because you use Harmonize, or just in general, you're using tools, whether, however you do discussions and things like that, to make these be more curiosity driven. Have you seen a bond form between the students, even though they're online? Do you see, like, I wouldn't say friendships, but special type of bonds, maybe friendships, but do you see anything like that happening in your courses?
So I do. I mean, these students are going through a lot of times each course together. So I do notice that maybe their discussions, initially, maybe if they're in that 148 course, which in that course, that's just basically medical billing. So basically, what I have them do there for that course is just a little introduction to AI. So I have the students our students are not coming from English. They're not coming from, places like that, but they are going to work in a healthcare environment. They may have to do things like come up with a collection letter. So that's one of the tasks that I have them do is I basically have them, hey, you work at this clinic. here is what you learned in this chapter about um, collection letters. I want you to take all of these bullet points about collection letters and I want you to write a collection letter to a patient. And then I have them submit that to the harmonized discussion forum. And then what I do is I have them, okay, now let's put your letter into ChatGPT and let's have it make
Mm.
recommendations based on what ChatGPT knows about working in the medical field and collection letters and things like that. And let's have it make a recommendations and see the letter that that it produces for you. And then I have them, hey, which letter do you like better? Is this letter's more direct? So it's nice to have the students go up there and actually look at each other's letters and make recommendations and talk about the letters. And then, as far as on to OST 249, which if they choose to do the medical coding diploma, they'll take that. And then that's when they're doing the case scenarios and things like that. But it is nice to see that our students kind of like go in there. I do make them comment, on other students' videos or on other students' work and just make recommendations or what they like about it. Or so I do notice that the communication does increase throughout those classes, especially if they're in there with like the same people.
Yeah, it just popped in my head. I guess, especially like with these programs like you run, where they are taking a series of classes, it probably is more similar to like year three, four at a university, where a lot of the times the same students are taking the same courses to get their requirement for their major. It probably is a similar correlation there. I never had thought about it like that until just now. But sorry, that kind of just sometimes thoughts pop in my head. I'm like, oh, okay. Uh, I, it really interests me that this is like you're using online tools, you're using videos, social media platforms for workforce CTE, vocational, whatever that word is that everybody uses now. I think every area uses a different terminology for it. Um, what made like what made you go and say I need to find better tools um like the Wayground and like Harmonize and incorporate? What was it that made you feel that way? And did you have any reservations because you do teach a class that's not your traditional, freshman coming in freshman year and taking classes?
Well, so basically that kind of started from the 16-week classes. I was taking those 16-week classes and I was condensing them down to 8 weeks and, coding guidelines and modifiers and all that stuff is a lot of information. And I can say in directions, you turn to this page in the table of contents and your ICD-10. It was just easier for me because, I'll fall asleep. Some people love to read. I fall asleep reading, textbooks, things like that. I just felt like my students needed another avenue to kind of quickly basically concrete that information in their head because there's been many times that I've read something in a textbook and I was like, I just don't get it. But I can watch a video and I'm like, oh, that's exactly what they mean. Okay, so they're different learners out there, and I feel like they were in a textbook. They were just passively like reading. They were not really retaining that information, and at least in using the tools that I use, maybe they're retaining some of that information. They can, which now you can read textbooks everywhere, right? You can read textbooks, you can have the textbooks read to you and listen to textbooks. But I just felt like there's many different avenues that students need to learn. Like a lot of students are learning on a ball field on their phone. They're watching, they can watch a video on a phone rather than read a textbook or whatever if they're at their kids' ball game and they're in between games or whatever without having to like tote textbooks around. I just felt like they needed that extra tools to concrete that information in their brains and actually retain it.
But now I'm going to push on you a little bit.
Okay.
There's something that you had told me you needed this, right? Like you had told me, like that was a big obstacle to go from 16 to 8 weeks. and you felt like you were being overwhelmed and you needed to figure out a way to be able to confidently get all the information into that shorter time period. Is that, I don't
Correct,
want to put words in your
correct.
mouth, but
Yes. So basically, like, I didn't want the students to miss any information or take away less from my class from going 16 weeks to 8 weeks. And that was my way of kind of putting that important information, and hopefully they get bits and pieces. Um, of really important information, because especially with coding, you've got a textbook and you've got three coding manuals in my 249 class. Well, automatically 249, if you come to my office and you get those three coding manuals on top of your textbook, it's like overwhelming, right? So I can pinpoint them to a video that quickly talks about this coding manual. Okay, and I've got like all these pages in this coding manual. So that was just kind of my way to simplify the information to them, get that information out to them in other modalities than just a textbook.
and what about like workload grading? Do you feel like in switching from relying more on the textbook to incorporating more of these different styles of modalities, did it increase your workload? Did it stay about the same? Did it increase or decrease or yeah?
Um, I would say maybe, I don't think it increased it a significant amount, but that is because I have utilized Chat GPT to assist me because, in these, I'd say acting as a, like, for example, if I have a scenario out there, and for one of the things I have students do in my procedure coding class is I have them pick a procedure of their choice. Okay. Whatever you're interested in. Okay. And a lot of them choose procedures that they've had in the past, or procedures that maybe their parents have had or something like that. And I say, go watch a video on this. And then I want you to tell me about the video. I want you to look up the code in the coding manual. Show me how you would do that. Tell me how you would do that. Tell me the differences in these codes. Are there multiple codes? Because sometimes there's multiple codes for a procedure based on many different things. So I have the students basically go through and tell the difference. So they're demonstrating to me that they understand the material. But then I can also correct things where if I was just using textbook content or McGraw-Hill content, I can't. A lot of those are multiple choice. So if they choose the wrong answer, I can't guide them in choosing what they did wrong. Whereas in this video scenario that I can go look at their video, I can go look at their scenario, and then I can reply to that. And basically, I just use AI that way to simplify the process. So while you may think I had a significant increase in the time it takes to grade, I really haven't seen like a significant increase.
That's good. That's good. I think that's one of the fears that a lot of instructors have, that if they go away from what they've done in the past, it's just going to add more work to them. But at least in my experience, most of the instructors I speak with, if there is a change, it's very minute, and then sometimes they even say it's gotten quicker. Just depends on um,
Absolutely. Just one of the things I really have to look at is, and that's not necessarily in the whole job itself, is, I have to verify AI. So I have to get my coding manual out. But I'm familiar, if you use this same coding scenario for a couple of months, or, then you should be familiar with it, and you should know, if AI is working properly to respond to that or not. And so.
yeah, yeah. Um, well, if an instructor came to you and said, "Okay, I would like to have my courses be more curiosity driven and have the students thinking and learning in different ways," what would be your advice to them of like what's the first step? What should they do first to go out and try to make their courses more like this?
Okay. So basically think of it in like three different steps. So exposure, like what do you want? Find course content out there that you want your students to be exposed to. Obviously, vet it, make sure that the content is reliable. Basically, produce your prompts. So, what do you want to do with that? Do you want to use Wayground to have them watch the video and then take out significant little pieces in there that you want them to understand and or basically want them to walk away with? And then, a short video basically. So just utilize anything you can out there, whether it's TikTok videos, say, hey, watch this video, YouTube reel, LinkedIn reels, anything like that that you can use. Even reading articles, things like that. Definitely depends on your discipline and things like that. But just search out things for them to do outside of textbook and kind of figure that all out. I don't know if I answered that question or not, but um, that's
Yeah,
basically how I went through.
and I would say, your approach probably wouldn't work for someone who says, I don't get on social media. That probably wouldn't be a good approach. But probably what I'm assuming I'm in sales and ed tech, right? So my
Right.
my my feeds in social media, even on Instagram and TikTok, sometimes I just get a lot of sales content and I get a lot of higher ed tech content. It's probably there already. You're probably seeing it, so you can probably dive into those that you find the most interesting yourself, which probably means your students are going to find it interesting.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in regards to someone that doesn't use social media and things like that, I feel like, just step out a little bit out of your comfort zone and use some things. You get familiar with it first and then, introduce it to your students because, every day we're advancing in technology and there's new things out there. So, and definitely your students probably need to know all that if they're in college and education, and most fields now are going to be kind of using a lot of technology and things like that. So,
Oh, that have you seen that? Have you seen where um, students are saying, I'm being asked to show skills in use of AI or skills in using media or things like that when they go to apply for jobs in medical coding?
so not specifically in medical coding so much. But I do think it's in if you don't work in medical coding and you work in an office either. Like there's so many tools out there that can help you, whether it's AI or whether it assists you in a medical office or whatever office you're in. Um, I just think that it's definitely going to be needed for that skill is going to be needed in
Tech
the future.
savvy in some way.
Yes,
Yeah,
wherever you go.
yeah, yeah. I feel like I see it, whereas 5 years ago, I don't think anybody would have asked me in an interview, do you know how to use AI? And that's probably one of the first questions you'd be asked today in
Yep.
my role. Uh, but and I'm sure even in higher education, that might be something that's if it's not already there, is coming. What's your stance on AI? What's your
Yeah.
ability to use AI as an instructor? It's probably already coming into those in those environments.
And it's definitely because I'm more on the educational side now, and I'm not necessarily in medical coding and billing every day to see how the AI is incorporated in the medical billing. I'm attending a convention next week that I'm really excited for. And one of the seminars that I signed up for is basically how do we exist beside AI in coding, right? Because while it's great, I told you earlier, it definitely gave me a wrong answer. And I was like, hey, that's not correct. And so I'm excited to attend that seminar just to see how in the real world, since I am on the educational side, they are working along with AI.
Yeah. Um. Okay. What was the name of that seminar that you're
So
going to?
it's going to be at the AAPC HealthCon convention in Dallas, Texas
Oh,
next
nice.
week. And it's
Next week.
co- uh, can't remember the exact name, but basically it's how do we work alongside AI in coding.
Nice. And somebody was asking if you would be if you would be willing to share your email, maybe put that in the chat. If anybody would be interested in reaching out to you. Um, so I do want to open it up if anybody has any other questions for Heather about how she structured this class, how she got more curiosity and integrating multimedia into her courses. Um, oh, Barbara, I have another question. Yeah, has Heather used Epic?
No, I have not. So I got out kind of right at that epic and kind of moved more into a educational role. So I
Okay.
never was exposed a whole lot to epic, although I would love to learn.
Well, thank you, Heather, so much. I'm going to kind of start closing things out. If anybody's got questions, please go ahead and put that in. We can answer those. But I just wanted to thank you so much for participating in this. I love what you're doing in your class. I think you're doing some really great work, and it's encouraging to see uh, any instructor try to be innovative. And I know I hear it from my son when he complains about his instructors. They're not very creative and et cetera, et cetera. Hopefully, there's nobody from ECU on on the webinar today. But when instructors take the time to try to make the courses more relevant, more engaging, uh, uh, to build that curiosity in. The students thank you. I know because I hear it myself, but it's very encouraging to see. So thank you for taking the time. I should also mention thank you to USDLA, the United States Distance Learning Association. They helped sponsor this today. So if you came to our webinar from one of their advertisements, thank you so much to USDLA, and their conference is actually coming up in June as well. And we'll actually Harmonize will be there. Alan will be there representing Harmonize. Um, and that makes me reminds me, please be on the lookout if you're going to any conferences. Shoot me an email as well. I'll put my email in here. I love to see people at the conferences. Um, and so if you happen to see Harmonize, come by, swing by, and say, hey, oh, Heather, it looks like Barbara is going to be there. So there you go.
Oh,
Be able to
great.
make a new friend.
Yeah.
Um, but uh, but we love to hear from you guys if you are out and about to the conferences. And also you can follow us on social media. I'm primarily we're only on LinkedIn as a tech company, but I'm on there as well. I think Heather and me and you are connected. I think I remember looking the other day to see if we were connected on LinkedIn. But if you'd like, you can also shoot me over a connection request. I'll be glad to connect with you and kind of see some of the things that are going on in Harmonized World. So, uh, again, Heather, thank you so much for sharing this. This was amazing, and good luck to your daughter as you're going through graduation. And I remember last year about this time, I was knee deep in trying to get graduation plans and parties, and I'm sure you're probably there where I was at this time last year. So
Yes. Yes. She picked up her cap and gown yesterday. So
exciting,
we're
exciting.
exciting.
All right. Well, did I miss any questions? Let me just make sure. Oh, Barbara had said Epic currently uses AI now, so I think it would be a good way to bring AI into the classroom. Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, I love the tools that are out there. It's so many different tools to be innovative with. Harmonize is one of those tools, but there's definitely lots of tools out there that you can take advantage of. Well, thank you everyone so much. We'll get off of here just a little. I know this was set for an hour. Sometimes I always say it just depends on how many questions and the way the conversation goes. Anywhere between 40 minutes and 60 minutes is usually what we have here. So we're going to get off here a little early if nobody else has any more questions. Give you a little bit of time back to your day, and if you have any other questions, reach out to us. I think we have another webinar coming up next week. You can register for that. That's going to be with Pittsburgh State out of Kansas. So you can join us there if you're interested in that one. But otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day and happy harmonizing.